Good afternoon. I'd first like to thank everyone for attending today's seminar despite the current situation with COVID-19. I'd first like to briefly tell you how we will proceed today. We will first introduce the participants and guests. That will be followed by the speakers' presentations and the roundtable discussion. Then we will receive questions from the audience. I hope you stay on until the very end. Good afternoon. My name is Choi Chun-woong, professor of SNU, and I will be moderating today. This seminar is part of the 2019 SBAU review seminar. It will be a Wednesday seminar. We will invite authoritative speakers in the urban and architecture area and listen to them every week. Then we will have roundtable discussions. I'd first like to introduce the distinguished guests that we have today. I'd first like to introduce from the French Embassy in Korea, Cultural Attaché Amanda Muelik, and the Deputy for Arts Cooperation, Ms. Yoon Ji-young. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Kim Seung-hye, the City Architect of Seoul Metropolitan Government, Mr. Kim Tae-young, the Director of USIB. Then we have our roundtable discussants, Professor Yoo So-kyun from the University of Seoul, Rafael Luna, professor from Hanyang University, and the general curator of the review exhibition, Professor John Hong from SNU. We also have speakers joining us from Amsterdam. Mr. Park Kobunik from Amsterdam is joining us today. Now I'd like to introduce several people from the Korean Architect Association. Professor Kim Do-yeon from Sungkyunkwan University is one of them. Now, before we go to the first presentation, I'd like to invite Professor John Hong to brief us about the exhibition, which starts today. That will be followed by an introduction of our first speaker, Mr. Alexandre Labasse.
Welcome, everybody. This is such a privilege to have this kind of event. We can't have these things, as you know, because of Corona, but we're trying, and it's a really unique situation because it's hybrid live, but it's also online. I hear there's a lot of people watching on YouTube, so hello, online community, but also hello and greetings to the people that can make it here. It's such a futuristic situation here, and I'm really proud that we were all able to come together like this. The exhibition is called cityasverb, and it's accompanied by 4 talks, and today really is the opening. And so we're really privileged to have a great group of speakers today. And the reason why we call it cityasverb is because the idea of the city, not as things, not as fixed things, but as things that can be used by people, occupied by people, is really the theme of this. That the city is a verb, it's something that is given momentum by the citizens that use it. So that's the basic theme. Today we have 3 great speakers. I'll introduce the first one, and then later on we'll be joined by Kelly and Laure Gayet. So Alexandre Labasse, many of you know his name. For the last 8 years, he's been the director of the Pavillon Arsenal in Paris, which is not just a place that exhibitions happen. It's really a cultural center for the urban planning and for the architecture of Paris and the whole metropolitan area. He's director of all the Pavilion's printed works, including volumes such as Paris Houseman, Gray Matter, Work in Progress, Reinventing Paris, which we'll speak more about today. He's curated exhibitions such as Building More, Living Better, Re-Architecture, and Work in Process. He was producer and commissioner of Ferry, which is the first incubator and accelerator of architectural projects and urban design dedicated to architects, designers, planners, and landscape designers. So this is just a brief introduction of Alexandre. Let's give him a hand. Could we switch the screen to Alexandre, please? Hello, thanks so much again for joining us.
Hello, John.
Yes, hello.
It's an honor to be with you today.
It's an honor that you can join us. This is fantastic.
Okay.
And this is really the opening of this exhibit, so you're really starting us off. A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. Try to be clear, try to be very precise on what you ask me.
Great.
You want to begin?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So I try to share my my desk. Sorry, it's not possible. You have to authorize myself to do that.
One more time? Oh, we have to accept the sharing screen.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So we may need your help a little bit. They have to accept the screen sharing. Excuse us for the glitches a little bit. This is our first time, but also we're using Zoom within another system. And so we have a little bit of. Yes. Now we see it finally. Is that Alexandre's screen? Yes.
You see it?
Yes, we do see it.
Okay.
Yes. So sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, maybe I can put the full screen. Maybe it's a full screen.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so is it okay for you like that?
It's perfect.
Okay. So I was just saying that we are situated in the center of Paris, and we have mostly 2,000 square meters of exhibition place. And actually, if you want to see it, we have an exhibition made by architect, designer, landscape engineers, and also with the MIT lab about the future of the Champs-Élysées. You could see a virtual tour, a virtual exhibition on our website if you are interested in. Of course, we also organize like a lecture and debates. This was the lecture of Renzo Piano at the beginning of the year. As you could see, it was before the Corona crisis. And we also made books, as you say, and apps and things like that. In third year, we produced more than 500 lectures and 300 exhibitions in-house. We also launched in 2017 an accelerator, an incubator for architects and designers to make prototype scale 1-to-1 in the city. It is supported by the constructor Mini and the French bank Gayet. And you could see one example of what we've done. So we select some very new project like this one made by the Fantasy. It's a water tank that we put on existing building to stock the rainwater and to regulate the overflows. We tested for 9 months, and now there is other prototypes that are undergoing in the city of Paris. Of course, as you know, we also participate to international events like the Biennale of Seoul. Thanks again for the invitation, with exhibition to present and to share the best practices. I will let, of course, Laure and Kelly explain the Co-urbanism exhibition that we present in that case. So mostly we are not a museum that puts things together and say this is architecture. We try to make people think about the future of the city, to share with everybody, and also try to participate in the making of the city. And it's very particular, I think, for a center of architecture. When Anne Hidalgo was the president of the place before she was elected mayor of the city of Paris, she decided to open the financement of the place to all the builder, all the developer, all the lender of the city. So nowadays, our budget is all from the city of Paris and all from all that person you see on the right of the screen. So it's very different for us because we can share with them our problematics, and also we can be a place for everybody to discuss to the future of the city. In that case, we invite many times for jury or to help people to make their project. So it was in that meaning that we participate and contribute to the invention on monitoring of the internal competition Reinventing Paris. Reinventing Paris was launched in the Pavillon in September 2014 by the Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, which is just elected this month, and with Jean-Louis Misica, which is the Deputy Mayor in charge of urbanism and architecture, who imagined this new concept and this brand new way to make the city together. There were two starting points. First of all, how to put innovation in urban planning on architecture. Of course, this question of experimentation is quite difficult in urban design on architecture due to the long-term process. But the feeling of the municipality at this time was that the world of real estate was not taking into account the evolution in the way of living or working. The second point was how to make a private project of common interests, how to ask private developers to make common value for places, how to extend the scope of common, how to give incentive to developers to make new area. The system is quite simple to engage this mutation with no extra budget from the city and no new law, no urban regulation, The idea is to sell or to rent land on property of the city, but in a total new way. Normally, as you might know, I think it's everywhere the same. When the city wants to sell property, she sells it to the highest bidder. The best price is the best project. With Reinventing Paris, the idea is to sell not to the most, for the best finance project, but for the most innovative project, the best program for the district and the metropolis, the valuable project for the Parisian people. So we select 23 sites inside Paris, everywhere inside Paris. There is very different type of site, like historical site, like this one, Hotel de la Boucherie, which is a building of the 15th century, where the French medicine was invented, but which were used for the last decades for offices, for municipal agents. Also some disused building like old railway station with no more rail, as you could see. Old conservatory for music, which was no more used. And one of the huge building, very most gainful site of the competition, the old prefecture, which is just behind me. Maybe you heard the voice of the construction. The city also proposed free space, but free space that we never used because it was difficult to use, like problem of foundation or bad accesses. And one of the most innovative sites was this one, in the historical axis of the city from the Louvre on the left to the La Défense on the right, just in front of the Palais des Congrès. And what is very original is that we sell dead space in the red light. So mostly we sell a huge part of void upon the periphery, which is the most useful road in Europe. It was immediately a big success because we have more than 800 teams registered, more than 600 teams authorized to give project, and at the end, after a few months, 375 proposals. The team comes from 15 nationalities with a huge diversity of participants, of profile, artists, urban planners, developers, startups, landscape designers, inhabitants, also users, developers, real estate industry. Everybody wants to participate to this proposal. But of course, you heard that when you open the competition, it's very difficult to select the project. So the rule was very simple. There was 9 innovation guides just for the city to choose the best project. Innovation is in use, in social anticipation, in participation of the people, in services, in energy efficiency of the building during its construction and during its use, of course. So that's what the guideline to select. And we invent a very specific ecosystem to judge a project. As I told before, that normally when you say, okay, I want to sell this land, you attend people to give a price and you take the best price. Nowadays you have to select project regarding architecture, form, use, price, and many things. So we invent a process in 2 phases. The first one was this one. So how to come from 2 projects to 74, how to analyze them and how to explain to the jury what is the best project and if the project is good or not, if the budget is relevant for that program, how does it work? We make that in 2 phases, and in between the 2 phases, the 74 finalist team have a meeting with the municipality to explain their project. At the end, each team were invited to present this project in front of a very large jury made with more than 30 members, composed by 2 panels. One of a political figure, elected official, Deputy Mayor of Paris, but also Deputy Mayor from neighborhood municipality, if necessary. And the other half of the jury was made from experts in architecture, town planning, mobility, engineering, innovation, urban agriculture from around the world. It was very stimulating to have all these people in the same room just to select one project. Each jury takes 4 to 8 hours to select team. So let's look at the results, if you like. Just one more thing. Of course, the Pavillon National was in the jury for all the jury to explain people architecture of each project. So as you saw, the Hotel de la Boucherie I showed you previously will open in September 2020. It's looked like an incubator for tomorrow, an incubator for philanthropy, a unique meeting place between patron, project leader, association, volunteers to encourage the emergence of philanthropy in France, which is not so much developed like in Anglo-Saxon countries. This is the inside of the building, so it's also very innovative, but it keeps the patrimony and the interest of the building. On the ground floor, you have this place to conferences, and you have this place for cooking and restoration. The railway station I show you will be added with this small wood tower. The team of developer, architect, urban researcher, chief imagine a lively urban stroll around the challenge of food in town. The motto in French was from de la fourche à la fourchette, which means directly from the production to the plate where you eat. And the program took place in this small tower you see in the middle of the image. The old academy will be transformed, actually, it's under construction. We also have a student residence upon, and hanging a green terrace, and the ground floor, a cafe restaurant, and the concierge will coexist with a cultural and associative space. To be very peaceful with the surrounding, the constructor imagined a total prefab building system in wood. It's very important to say that at the end of the competition, half of the project are made in wood, but regarding to the last 10 or 20 years, there was no building in wood in the city. Of course, it's the intent to be a low carbon construction. So I told you the prefecture just behind me is going to be a new hub for Parisian people, but also for all the metropolis, with a mixed-use program of 43,000 square meters, including housing, social but also private housing, offices, hotel, youth hotel in the building ad on the front of the building in glass, shops, food markets, cultural space, fitness, and also a swimming pool in the ground floor. And what is interesting like this is that to say that the swimming pool is added not only for the hotel but also for the district all around. Everybody can use the swimming pool 2 days a week. So you see it's a common equipment made by a private client. On the top of the building, you have to imagine that the building was the prefecture, so no Parisian could go inside the building before it's changing. But tomorrow, everybody can go at the top with in this amazing rooftop consumed by the artist Laure. We try to make it disappear in the sky. In total, use other scale, the small piece of land I show you is going to be a urban farming led by a community of people in integration and students in horticulture on the side. The building opened its first stage last month, just after the containment in France, with the restaurants, as you could see, it's still in work. For the void, the amazing void on the periphery, this is the building. It's designed by Japanese architect Su Fujimoto, maybe you know him, with the French team also. And both deployed an innovation in architecture of the building and in use proposals also. The project provides housing, offices, hotel, restaurants, center dedicated for children, a very large one, the biggest one in Paris, a bus station with metropolitan influence. And on the top, housing, private housing with amazing view. One thing quite important to say is that of course we sell land, but we want the building are made like we decide in the jury. So the city and notary invent a new kind of contract between them and the owner, the future owner, to engage each team for 10 years with specific audit made by the team. So this project named 1,000 trees. So the developer undertakes themselves to plant, of course, 1,000 trees as a promise, but also to make the maintenance of the garden during 10 years. So as you could imagine, Reinventing Paris invents a new kind of choosing the project, but also a new kind of make the sell and a new kind of how to work with private investors. Of course, I think all the innovation will not fall, but no more than in the classical system. So what's new for us in Reinventing Paris? The huge development of mixed building. There was no mixed building before, nowadays there's a lot of mixed building. The real estate industry changed totally its mind. And it's very interesting, like you mix offices with Fab Lab, food, co-working, even from housing system, you have new kind of housing in Paris, and it's very interesting. There's a large use of new technology in the building, like Wi-Fi, as you know, Wi-Fi by lights, beam, or smart grid. So a lot of things were developed for and during the contest, and nowadays they are still in process. And at the end, as I already told, there is huge priority to construct without concrete, how to change the concrete construction, which is a main intent of the city of Paris to be neutral in carbon in 2050. So we have a lot of projects that use new materials. One word about the consequences, economical consequences. Of course, this data, I have to say that these data were made before the COVID crisis. So this is what we attempt to the economical consequences, but of course it will maybe change a little bit with the crisis. What are the benefits for Parisian people? The first one is that all the winning projects have been made with the inhabitants of the district. So all the projects have to share, have to discuss, have to explain their program with inhabitants and to change the program if inhabitants want to other thing and to amend it. So it's very important. Another thing, of course, big benefits for Parisian people is that housing units create more than 1,300, including half in social housing, so it's very important. Another point is the creation of planted area as a quality on green space, which is a huge demand of Parisian people. As you know, Paris is one of the more dense cities in the world, and people want new green space. And this was the green space are being taken care for everyone. So, more or less after 5 years, we can say that Reinventing Paris was really a big success. And there is a lot of new kind of contests like this. The city launched 3 years ago Reinventing Paris 2, dedicated to underground and groundscape urbanism, and also launched with the C40 Reinventing City, which is 20 metropolis in the world who invent new city and new competition like this. That was the exhibition for us. Let's go back in the Arsenal, the presentation of the exhibition with all the panel of all the team and all the models, films and everything prototype. And for us, it was also a big success. In 3 months, we have more than 90,000 visitors. We sell all the book. We show it previously. That's what the book. And many itinerary exhibitions to explain this new process. And that was the opening day. So as you could see, it was also for everybody a good moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for it's. I'm sure there's so much more to say, but we just got a taste of this. This is great, and we have. I'm sure we'll have many questions for you. So we will move on to our next speakers. We're so privileged to have Kelly Ng and Laure Gayet speaking, and they were actually, along with the Pavillon, curators of an amazing movie, which I hope many of you can see. It's called Collaborative Fabrications of the City, Co-urbanism, and I think they're going to be talking about that today. Kelly Ng and Laure Gayet are principals of Atelier Approches, and they specialize in people's engagement in urban projects through tactical urbanism, urban design prototyping, artistic action in urban space, and also through urban games on urbanism. The Atelier specializes on issues of gender in the city and urban and social impact assessment. So we would love to welcome you both, Kelly and Laure. If we can switch over the screen.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, hello. Yes, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us, and we've been glad to see the picture of our exhibition in Seoul outside in the streets. So we were very glad to know that.
Yes, yes. We'll send you some photos. Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
please.
thank you.
That would be great. Yeah. So we try to share our screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay,
Good.
great.
Je peux l'agrandir ou pas, alors?
If I do that, no.
Affichage. Plein d'écran.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Very
Okay.
nice.
Perfect. So we are the Approches studio. We're based exactly as you said on the idea of including people in the urban transformation process. We develop a multidisciplinary approach crossing urbanism, as we are, Kelly and me, urbanists, but also participatory architecture, artistic production, as you said, graphic and social design. And we have 3 main areas of activity, what we call in French terrain, which means in the field, our urbanist activity. And we do also do some professional training on gender and urbanism, on tactical and participatory processes, and and that's it. And we do also some research on innovative forms of urbanism. So co-urbanism was part of this activity. So our main methodology is to combine action in the field and urban study. So the action is the idea of transforming very quickly the space with people, and to test and to prototype urban design, to prototype uses, and answering urgent local needs, and to connect to the future and the long-term transformation. So to connect to the urban study in terms of uses, in terms of local needs, or local and metropolitan potential of the area. So our main tool is what we call in French, chantier ouvert. So I don't have to translate it, but let's say that we build up urban spaces with communities. And it's a sort of big event during 1 or 2 weeks. And we do some workshops with people to create the urban space. That can be terrace, playgrounds, sports spaces, shelter, or even graphic design action in the space. And we work with wood, with metal, different materials. We also organize some debates for people to be involved in the reflection, and also parties and local events for federating local communities.
Alors, je ne sais pas si vous changez vos images, mais il n'y a pas d'image qui change.
Oh, vraiment? Ah oui.
Ah, depuis le début. Là, on va revenir alors.
So sorry. It seems that there is a problem. Alors,
On va faire encore mon
Faut enlever le plein écran.
ouais.
bah oui.
Bah c'est bon. Is that fine for you?
On peut revenir vite fait.
Yeah, yes, we see it. Oh, was the slide?
Okay,
the slide wasn't
sorry about
advancing?
that.
Oh, okay.
So here was the first slide, action and urban study. The idea of build up urban space with communities. Sorry. And the co-urbanism exhibition. So we talked with Alexandre about this exhibition, and the idea was to do a sort of collection of 15 collaborative practices in urbanism. So we do organize workshops and talk with 40 people to select 15 projects in France and around the world, with various contexts, various different contexts, in rural context, in cities, or in the suburbs also. So here is a view of the exhibition in Paris. And so the idea was to qualify and to analyze the tools and the methodologies, the process that would support a more inclusive city. And the idea was not to do a sort of manifest, but a demonstration of the tools and the way we could do the city by a more inclusive manner. So we had 3 main items that guided the exhibitions. The collaborations, we did the first main idea, of course, how to put dialogue at the center of urban design. I mean, dialogue with inhabitants, of course, but also within the professional community that is not used to cross the disciplines and just to talk, for example, with inhabitants. And this item is really connected with 2 other items, the temporalities, and the big issue is how to connect long-term urban changes with the daily life. And it's also connected to the 3rd item that we call urban forms. It's not about architectural forms, but it's how to adapt the city to the human scale, just to feel comfortable in the city. So today we decide just to present four projects, only 4 projects for introducing the exhibition.
So I will begin to explain maybe one project. The project is called Université Foraine, and in English we can say like maybe Fairground University. It is located in metropolis called Rennes in France, and it is headed by a French studio named Notre Atelier commun, and the principal architect is Patrick Bouchin. Maybe you know it. And it is a project born by a partnership, a real partnership between the city of Rennes and the studio of architecture Notre Atelier commun. And the main principle of this project that we will explain you is the idea of architectural permanence. And what is it? So the architectural permanence for Patrick Bouchin is we say an innovative way for planning, for transforming spaces, but not forecasting without programming what will be the future uses, but only using, occupying, and living spaces. So to explain more precisely, this project is located in the historical district, the old town, and it is in a big building, historical, where there were an old university, a dental university that was empty, vacant now, nearly, and the council, the city has the money to transform it. So they decide to make this new way, this architectural permanence. Now I will show you little photographies like this to show you the process. The first year of the project, it was in 2012, they began to only organize, not transfer, but only organize big meetings in really convivial and extraordinary scenes in an environment that can people share and meet and share ideas. And we can see here one meeting that were held in a forest like this, and they were talking about different problematics, really large, like arts, politics, memory, maybe health also. And like this, they began to make little by little a community, a group of people that were really interested to involve in the project. And this community were really different people, from little organization, social organization, really involved with maybe homeless people, to big institutions like universities or schools in Rennes, in the city. The second year, they passed to action, and they were all. It was interesting because it was really headed by one person. This architect was a woman called Sophie Ricard, and she had only one key for the building, and began to open the doors of the building to any organization who wanted to take part of the project and test new uses and a multiplicity of uses with a free access. Like this, little by little, they began to transform the building that began to be not only a normal building, but maybe with a public utility. And this person, Sophie Ricard, was really interesting because she played a new role. She wasn't not only an architect, she was between urban and social design. She was maybe like a mediator, and she was able to match maybe local needs and local skills, you know. Like this, we see a lot of different events. Here, just a room that was like a living room or somewhere where people can meet each others. Like this, also maybe like a school dance that can make rehearsals in empty spaces. Also here, a social organization that organize like health spas for the homeless people, or another organization here about well-being and massages, corporal massages. Here, another photography of an agroecology university testing like a workshop on seeds. And finally, also this type of partnership with trainers in a construction or a carpentry university. And they began to, little by little, build the furnitures for the building. So in short phrase sentences, I can conclude this project. So what is interesting, like I said, is the Studio of Architecture was not able only to build and to maybe draw plans and had a good composition architectural that was adapted to the space, to the light, and with harmony. It was also the important key role. It was also to make a building by relationships between people. Here we see a plan with a lot of different uses that can be evolutive in the years, like with an incremental process. And finally, just one slide to show you that now it is ongoing. It is running this project, and the new way of thinking without programming has been consolidating. It has been perpetuated in one way, because they have transformed only the ground floor of the building into a school. But upstairs, it's always what they call the hostel of projects. And like this, they can, the building can always housed, I don't know how, they can always be in an evolutive and a multiplicity of uses upstairs. Like this. It's interesting, okay? That's fine, thank you. And the second project is connected to items, the collaboration and temporalities. It's in New York City Plaza program. They've launched that program more than 10 years ago now. And it's the idea of creating new plaza by tactical urbanism. It comes from a strategy, a pedestrian strategy, and the idea of all New Yorkers should live within a 10-minute walk of an open space. So this means that they realize they have too much car lanes in the city, and they have so many spots where pedestrians are crowded. So it causes a lot of accidents, and it's not comfortable for people. So they identify where they could change, where they could use underused car lanes and to transform them into plaza. So they've changed around 74 locations since they've created this plan that is still working more than 10 years ago. So here is Times Square before the transformation. So you can see the huge lanes everywhere in the image. And here is the new Times Square. I think it's an old photography.
So here was a test of the transformation of in a new pedestrian plaza. This program has a very interesting way of imagining the uses, because it's based on a call for proposal for organization in the city. The organization can be community groups, shops, cultural organizations, or any other private stakeholder that would like to organize some events and activities, sportive activities, cultural activities, social activities in its neighborhood. So the team, the organization is selected on its capacity of inviting a social project that generates social interaction. And it's also another key factor of selection is how they include all the people of the area. So how did they organize workshop before to inviting people to give their RD or not? And then the second step is that the Department of Transport, called DOT, will fund the urban transformation, and they will assist the organization for creating an appropriate design for the social project they've imagined. And then the organization will be in charge of the cultural program, of the events, or funding this program, but also of the maintenance of the plaza. So it's quite different from here in France, where it's all for a local institution in charge of the maintenance. So it's interesting for us to see that. The other interesting point of this project is the timeline. How do they implement the urban change in 3 phases? First of all, they start and they just test with a one-day event plaza. You just put some barriers, some chairs and table, and you see what happens. Is it a good idea to create a plaza in this space? Then, if the conclusions are good, you start with the interim material plaza. I mean, just still, you still have movable tables and chairs, but you have plotted planters and granite blocks that create a pedestrian space. And then, if it works, you can have permanent urban design, and with concrete and grounded plantings, but still movable furniture, because the idea is still to have different activities in the space. Is it okay for the timing, or should we be shorter?
I think that's, you're doing fine. How long more, are you halfway through or 2/3?
We have 2 projects, but maybe 3.
No, two projects.
I think that's perfect, yes.
Okay, good.
Great. So the third project is about, sorry, I've put it in French. It's about urban forms. It's in Lille, a city in the north of France. And it's a project by Gayet architects from Copenhagen and Claire Shorter, an urbanist in France. It's about how do we recreate human scale in the city. So here is a wasteland, 23 hectares of wasteland, which was a train station before. it's very close to the center of Lille. Lille is quite big city in France. And a part of the warehouse has been rehabilitated already for cultural equipment. So the area has cultural activation, but the empty space is quite still very, very huge. And the main issue is how to create urban life in a new piece of fabric into the city. I mean, how do you combine a metropole and a local life, and how do you activate it progressively? So in 2013, Gayet Architects and Co-curators has been hired to create the master plan of this future new area. So they first of all imagine a new way of talking with people with this Lego maquettes. Lego, do you know? That's for children play. But that's not the more interesting, actually. They started also a sort of big dialogue with local institutions and gather 3 times around 100 people from the Lille city in charge of the conception of the city and of the maintenance of the city. And then they gather various hierarchical levels. I mean, the gardener and the urban department director, just for them to share their vision on their work. And just for the Gayet studio to know more quickly how the city lives, how it functions, and what they have to know when they will conceive the project. And the second very interesting point of this project is the vision of the Gayet studio. Actually, the people are the starting point of their job. It's an anthropological approach that put the pedestrian at the center of the city. How they move, how they feel, how they behave, and when you walk in the city at 5 or 6 kilometers per hour, what do you see? What do you feel? And how could you develop visual and social interaction? So that's the main idea of the Gayet studio. First of all, they think about the life you would like to have in the city. Then you create the space, the urban design that would support this life. And third only, you create the buildings and the volumes that would support the life city, the city life, sorry. So here, a very quick glance at the master plan of the project, of the area. What is interesting is that, well, it's quite common in that way that they've developed different levels of public space, such as this large pedestrian avenue that will have a metropolitan destination. But, and that's more interesting for us, is how they decided to create a sort of curve pathway that would create new point of views and that would create surprise when you walk within the city. So that's just interesting. Just they decided not to do a linear city. And they try to imagine the conditions of neighbor from the apartment, of course, but from the building, the block, and the quarter. They take the feeling of neighbor at all scales. For example, for the building, they decided that Yeah. They decided that we need to reduce the number of apartments by staircase just for people to know each other. If you have 6 to 15 apartments, you can know all your building community. And there's a lot of people going outside, so it's more active urban life. And at the block level, if you create a block no more than 50 meters large, the community will be able to meet, especially if you imagine a common, a shared space inside. And you can see that at the quarter level, the scale, the human scale, is also respected because this is small blocks. These are small blocks. Yeah. So that's it for this project.
And finally, we can pass quickly to the last project. The last project is about collaboration. So the main maybe subject of the exhibition. And it is called Je peux pas, j'ai chantier. I cannot do it, I have to build it. And it is in a middle-sized town named Dax in the south west of France. And the project is born after a call of project launched by the city of Dax. And the studio of architecture that won this call is named Bruit du Frigo, with also Trouillot and Hermel. And we will mainly explain what Bruit du Frigo do, because this is the studio that headed the participative way of thinking the master plan and the urbanism. So we will explain you during this project a new and an innovative way of planning about co-building public spaces and about first and second construction sites. So let's go. Here we can see what they have done for the first step of the process of the project. The first year, it was in 2013, they have built an ephemeral little hut, a little building, and a public building, but it was built only for 1 week. And this ephemeral building was really interesting because the objective, the goal of building this was to house a new way of meeting each other with people, a neutral space that can permit and liberate the people to be able to express themselves about their district and to also meet each other between inhabitants that were not used to speak each other's. Here, every afternoon, they make workshops to imagine the future of the public spaces. And in the evening, they organized cultural and convivial events. We have seen that in all the projects, it is important, this part of conviviality. And there were like concerts or playing games like pétanque, if you know, in France, or playing maybe other type of little competitions of cooking together, something like this. And then what is interesting at the end, it is that Bruit du Frigo, the architecture studio, imagine a new way of planning inspired by the architect Nicolas Soulier. And they imagine 2 forms of planning the district with first works, first construction sites, and second works. So the first works were mainly the infrastructure, the structural way to build the city. It is, we can explain it, but like big investments for water facilities, electricity facilities, for lighting the district, or sidewalks, footpaths for the roads. So this is the first big investments that can be imagined for the city scale, but also they imagine a multiplicity of second works, and the second works were imagined with the people. It was like programmed with the people, designed with the people, and also constructed really made with the people. And this all these little works were like fencing or constructing little gardens or terraces, something like that. So at the end, all this little action combined with the territory urban scale make a progressive way of planning the district. And they realize it. So this is not only a theory. We can see here like a plan where they imagine to locate the little places, plaza that they can build. And also in green, we can see all the little lounges and little places that can be co-built with the people just under their housing, in front of their housing. Here we see one photography when they were imagining with the inhabitants little lounges, street lounges, with old people and young people. And an example of what they constructed with the people, mixing uses of resting, discussing, and gardening, like this. Other photography when we can see that they were really co-building the terraces and the lounges in the public space. And here we can see examples of the little construction that they build, not only lounges, but also sport facilities. We can see here street workout and ping pong tables, like this. And finally, this last photography where we can see they built a really big place to meet each other, and like with also a barbecue. And maybe we can conclude all this presentation. And what is interesting, so for this last project, is that finally, Le Bruit du Frigo, the architects, maybe propose us a new way of planning, maybe more participative, more progressive in time, that cross a lot of dimension. Maybe they draw a transitional urbanism that can be across different scales between maybe urban and social design, and maybe in between also short-term action and long-term actions. And I don't know if you want to say more.
Maybe this exhibition has been thought 5 years ago, but it's still very, we can see that all those tools are very present in our daily practices in France, maybe in Korea too. And nowadays we talk about urbanism of links, or maybe transitional urbanism, that the French guy Raphaël Besson who talk about that. And yes, exactly, that's the idea of recreating transitions between social connection during the time of conception, but also in the urban life. That's also about transition between the human scale, the neighbor scale, the quarter city territorial scale, maybe for this item. and transition in the process. We have some very evolutive and step-by-step process of urban design that works, that is based on tests and iteration. So that's it. Maybe we can talk about that later. Thank you.
It's very early in Paris, and yet you gave us a very interesting presentation. I'd like to thank all of our three speakers once again. For the first presentation, Reinventing Paris, we heard about how Paris was, through participative means, trying to use the assets of Paris to reinterpret its assets. And in the second presentation, we heard about the strategic approaches on how to change small things, and through ephemeral urban actions, how we can bring about change. It was very interesting. I'd like to invite our discussants to give their comments, and then we will like to ask the audience to give comments or ask questions. We are receiving comments and questions online too, but I'd like to ask Mr. Kim to give his comments first.
처음에 이제 제 소개부터
Let me
간단하게
introduce
하겠습니다.
myself
그러니까 저희는
first.
그 영어로는 Urban Space Improvement Bureau라고 이제
I'm working
도시공간
at the Urban
개선단이라는
Space
이름하에서
Implementation
서울시청에서
Bureau. It's within
한
the
협력하는
City of Seoul,
공무원들이 한 50명
and we have
정도
about 50 public
외부에 있는
officials who are working
공무원축가라는 이름으로 한
for
200명
this department,
정도의
and we have 200 external
또
architects
마을
who are
건축가
working
타운 아키텍트라는
with the
200명
other
그래서
200
그런
town
외부
architects on
건축,
different
민간
projects,
건축가 같이
and we
협업을
have
하는
public
그런
and private
구조고요.
architects who are working together
저희는
for
주로 오늘
USIB.
보여주신 그
And
인벤트 파리 같은 서울의 이제 혁신
we
프로젝트를
are working
기획하고
on
실현하고
innovating projects for
또
Seoul, like
여기
the
참여해 주신
Reinventing
이제
Paris
비엔날레,
project,
서울 비엔날레를
and we
주관하고
organize the
지금
Seoul
여기 이 행사
Biennale
장소를
of
하는
Architecture,
전시관을 운영하는
and we are
그런
also
역할을
managing
하고 있습니다. 또
exhibitions like the
건축가들이
one we are
관심
having
있는
today.
서울의 그
And
프로젝트 서울이라는
many
이름으로
architects
서울에서
who are
벌어지는
interested
모든 현상공
are
프로젝트를
participating in the
알려주고
project
관리하는 그런
Seoul,
역할을
and
하고 있습니다.
they
그래서
are
간단하게 좀
bidding for
소개를
projects and
하고요.
working on many different
그다음에
projects.
이제 그 저희가 그 처음에 오늘 같이 논의한 리인벤터 파리 프로젝트는
And
저한테 굉장히
the
개인적으로
Reinventing Paris project is very close to my heart, because in 2016 I met the mayor, Anne Hidalgo, in person, and I heard about this project from her directly, and it was very impressive. And
프로젝트가 저는 이제 오늘 내용과 더불어 궁금했던 게
I had some questions about this project. Anne Hidalgo, the mayor, used to work as the director of urban planning and wanted to work on innovative projects. And once she became mayor, she was able to implement the projects that she wanted to do. And I realized that innovating a city was possible when I looked at this case, and it was very inspiring. Later on, we wanted to benchmark this project, and I met the mayor Hidalgo consecutively, and I also met with the vice deputy mayor Jean-Louis Misika to study the Reinventing Paris project. And there are some things that Paris was able to do that we were unable to do in Seoul. In the case of Misika, the deputy mayor, he works on tourism, art, and culture, not just urban planning, and he was able to work on the project from many different aspects, and that was very interesting. We wanted to work on innovative projects, benchmarking, Reinventing Paris, Yeonhee area, Huksan area, And we want to build a living space on top of a highway, and it is ongoing. And Paris started before us, but you know, Seoul catches up very quickly. And so we hope to get great results, many more than Paris, maybe. And one difference is because of regulatory issues and institutional issues, Reinventing Paris is a project where the private and public work and collaborate together. But for Seoul, many of the projects are led by the city mostly. And the Reinventing Paris project would like to work on innovating the underground and the Seine area. For us, we would like to use new technologies. For example, the underground station, we would like to use new technologies in order to create a new type of underground. And we were able to do that for the first time in the world. And we haven't announced it yet, but we did it for the first time last year. And we think that we will be able to reap the results soon. And according to the data, we will be able to get some good results from this underground space. And we grew plants and fruit in the underground, and I tasted what was harvested there, and it tasted very good. In any case, I think that not just in terms of technology, but architecture is something that needs collaboration. We have to work with different disciplines, we have to work with the community, with different people, and we have to work in union with other stakeholders. And through the SBIA, which we organize twice, we are sharing hundreds of new ideas. And I think it's true for Paris, and it's true for Seoul. A city does not exist alone. And through the Corona-19 virus, we realized how important it is to work together, to come together, to share technologies, and to share ideas. And I realize how great it is to share ideas today. And next year, we're going to have SBAU once again, and we would like to identify new ideas that will be helpful for our event. Thank you very much.
I'm quite surprised to see how close Seoul and Paris is. Before we proceed, I'd like to invite Mr. Paco Pumik from Amsterdam, who's joining us. I'd like to invite him to make some comments.
Thank you for the great lectures from France. I work as the chief urban designer in the city of Amsterdam, and I was a curator for the Seoul Biennale exhibition last year in 2019. We showed parts of Amsterdam and also international collaboration, in this case with Zanzibar. Well, for me, it's mesmerizing because what's happening in France, in Paris, because we work in a very big municipality. Used to be very top-down structured with a very big planning history also. We've got 600 people in our planning staff, but it's very multidisciplinary. So we have landscape architects, urban designers, traffic engineers. So it's very multi-organized, and in that way it works pretty integrated. Water engineering is part of it, green engineering. But what lacks a little bit, and what I really found intriguing in this presentations, is the social aspect. So bringing in the social aspects within a design process is really fantastic, I think. And I've been a regular visitor at Pavillon d'Arsenal in Paris. I went to the Haussmann thing. I also went to Paris 2 times to interview people from the Reinventing Paris cycle, from people from Alexandre, who did project management. And because I also think that in Amsterdam, we could use this kind of methodology to open up the design debate on how to build a city. So I think it's really impressive what's happening in Paris. But I also have some critical questions because I'm also intrigued what happens, because it runs for a few years now. And could you maybe, Alexandre, reflect on, did it change in general the way you think about city making in Paris? Or is it just like a smart acupuncture, which is temporary? So that's my first question. Could you reflect on that?
It's totally changed the real estate industry. It was not the first time that Paris changed its way to proceed with a private investor and with inhabitants. So also it's quite a long story, because previously, before the Reinventing Paris, when Anne Hidalgo was deputy mayor of Paris in charge of urbanism on architecture, she also invited all the private developers to make architecture competitions for their project. So they are not obliged, of course, but the city asks them to do that. And you have one key, one very, it's the building permit. With the building permit, you can ask people to do what they don't want to do before the project. So you can manage that, and you can ask them to do exactly what you want, not exactly, but mostly what you want, and to change the program if they want. So with that phases and with this Reinventing Paris phases, it changed totally the way that private and public work for the city. And I think for the next year, it's still the same system that will be applied. We saw that, for example, for the Tour Montparnasse, which is also a big project in the core of Paris, which is an ongoing project from private investor. And private investor make a long-term jury for more than 1 year with the city of Paris, with the Pavillon National, to decide which project is the best at the end for the construction. So as you could see, it's not only one moment, but it's a new way to make project inside the city and to make a private project to become with general interest. So this is the main idea. And I think it's not finished. Just to know that there is 4 projects that are already delivered from Reinventing Paris and 12 under construction nowadays.
Mm-hmm. So you say that this sort of come to a really system change in that way?
I think it's going to change a lot because anyway, the city have no more money to make things. So the main idea is to make the budget support by private investor and to make the private investor a common interest project. So I think it's going to be all the time the same for the next years. I'm sure that. I'm not sure there's so many projects because inhabitants of Paris don't want so many projects, but I'm sure that the process will be still the same.
Yeah, it's a very international. Reinventing is very international. The way it is set open to the world. Can you tell a little bit more about the Reinventing Cities?
Reinventing Cities, it's happened, it works. I think it depends of each country. I don't have the feedback of each country's contest, but I think it's worked a little bit, not so much.
Is it running already?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're not part of it.
No.
Unfortunately.
No, that's right.
For the second lecture, Kelly and I was really Laure. It's so important the way that out of public space and out of social inclusiveness you design and you think about the city. And also in Amsterdam, we're really working a lot with these kind of openings in the field of enhancing social issues, societal issues within the urban planning. It's all still, it's not yet part of our system, but we're experimenting, let's say, with also not only designing everything ourselves, but co-designing with citizens, also with using external architects, which normally we didn't do. But now the last years we experimented many projects with external and young talent. And it gives a whole new energy. So what I think and what I learned from this discussion is that the way you work is very important. So I mean, you can think of a concept and then try to do it, but I think within the action, the way you work, that's where the success comes from, and the inclusiveness. So I'm really I'm really inspired, to be honest. And I hope to meet you in some way. And yeah, the projects we're doing right now, I see so many similarities. So I will give a lecture next week, next Wednesday. So then we can also show some aspects. And listening to these presentations, I already made some notes that are going to change some things in my lecture to make it more.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. And I would just add that the idea is just to learning by doing. So that's what we do from the beginning.
Yeah, it's a new way. It's really interesting what you said, because it's not only something that you can learn, even if it would be good that urban university try to learn this, but it's not only methods that you can apply. It's also what you said, an approach and a way of being. And for Patrick Bouchin and in the project of Rennes, it was really this. She wasn't not only an architect, like imposing idea or like an expert. She was really like a neighbor during the project.
Yeah, it's also about vulnerability and the wanting to work together. And that's sometimes really difficult, and you need to change systematic thinking of people, which think they know the right thing, but it's not necessarily the most inclusive way of urban planning.
I think
another thing of inclusiveness is climate and nature. So it's not only about people; it's also about including nature and water systems. So I'm going to show some things next week also on that aspect. So it's inclusiveness on a holistic level also.
Yes, sure.
Which also Seoul, by the way, is really inventive in. So I'm also curious about the reflection on the part of Seoul on this.
I think the urban disposition is changing a little bit. The idea is to include social design. I mean, you start from the need of people and you try to imagine solutions. So the urban design is really connected to the social needs at every scale, of course.
Yeah, but the way you organize it is very important then, because sometimes you do it too much top down or you want to control it in the participation process. So we had it in Amsterdam last year, and there was a participation strike. So the people were fed up with the way the participation went. And then they sort of strike. So we don't want to cooperate anymore with this. So it has to be the way you approach it. I think we can learn from you, the way you approach this kind of participation process.
Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 그래서 다음은 다시 서울로.
Yes, thank you very much. So now we return to Seoul and we invite Professor Yoo Seok-yeon from the University of Seoul to make her comments. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the inspiring and interesting presentations. The first presentation, with regard to the first presentation, I was formerly a practicing architect, but from 12 years ago, I started teaching at the University of Seoul in the urban engineering department. The space of the public, the space of the private, and how they collaborate are the areas of interest for me. In the first case, we saw that Paris has to bring in private investors because they don't have much money. In the case of Seoul, it's a city that went through about 30 years of fast development. And during that time, public resources did not play a big part. It was mostly the private funding that developed the city and made it into this very dense space. But then afterwards, people have started focusing more on regenerating the city, on preserving the city. And now it's the public sector that's investing a lot of money to make that happen. So that's a great change that took place. The public spending a lot of money means that we are reviewing the city from the public good perspective, and we're trying to rebuild the city. But I think the process itself is still top down. In this respect, I'd like to ask Paris. The Reinventor Paris consisted of 9 criteria for innovation. And you said that the public did not impose any additional regulation and did not put in any further resources. Is that possible? Is it possible to have no regulations? Because in Seoul, there are so many building rules, even for a small building. If you want to remodel or renovate an existing building, you have to abide by strict rules and regulations. There are so many rules in the city level. These rules have been accumulating, more rules have been added, so now it's become a very rigid system and very restrictive. So if it's a project that's led by the government and participated by the citizens, it's still hard to move around all of these regulations. How did Paris go about doing this, and how much was it deregulated?
Sorry, maybe I was not clear. Thank you so much for your question. We don't change any rules of the urban system. We don't change the regulation rules. We don't change the patrimonial rules. We don't change the climate rules for building. We only change the criteria to judge the project. So all the projects you see are inside the rules, but they invent inside that rule the new way of use, the new way of construction, the new way of use of the building. So that was very difficult for architects to understand that we are not looking for the highest building. We are not looking for the biggest building. We are just looking for the building that will just fit for the site with his budget, with his program, and to make the better project for the district. So, but all the rules were still the same. No change, absolutely no change. Is it more clear?
Yes, thank you. I think I need to ask further questions to find out the specifics. But when it comes to historical buildings, it costs a lot to reuse it. In that case, is it the private company that buys that building and looks at the business feasibility? I'd like to know that, but let's put that aside for now. Influenced by Reinventor Paris, Seoul is now proceeding with several projects, and I am a professional advisor to one of the projects called covering a part of the public highway and building a large number of units of private housing, because the elevated highways in the city have now divided the city, but now by building houses on top of that elevated highway, we'll be building parks as well, and it connects the city again. There will be public facilities in that project as well. Now, we're now talking with the residents and the architects to find out what the needs of the residents are. When we were designing this project, we were heavily influenced by Reinventing Paris project. So it was a great opportunity to listen to your presentation. The second presentation was a very interesting presentation on co-urbanism. When I shifted from architecture to urbanism, I thought I was changing my occupation, but I think now they're one and the same thing. Because in urban architecture, the most important thing is residents' participation. In the city, we say that the citizens participate in the decision making, but actually the degree of participation differs. There's a huge spectrum in terms of the degree of participation. And for us, it's hard to decide how much participation we're going to apply. For example, a lot of times participation stops at just gathering the citizens and explaining the project to them. But I found out that in your case, it's not only co-design, but also co-production. I think that was very significant, and it gave me a lot to think about. As you two designed the project, you probably thought that if this was to be possible, for example, in the city of Lille or Dax, you've got many local governments. That means that you have to discuss beforehand with these local governments, because otherwise, when the private citizens come into this public domain, there will be some challenges, and I'm sure there will be some restrictions and regulations. How free was it? We saw this small pavilion or this hut-like building. I think maybe it was possible because that building was just a temporary or ephemeral building. In Korea, when we do some sort of exhibition project, sometimes we do it as an urban poly project, but right now we have a lot of active projects going on in the public art space. Let me go back to what I was talking about. In the initial stage of planning, how do you control the degree of public participation? How do you decide on the degree of public participation in the initial designing stage?
I'm not sure we're able to control the degree of participation, actually. It depends on where you act. It's quite easy to involve, for example, Parisian people. It's not so easy to involve people in the suburbs and in poor areas. So we don't have a prepared answer for that question. We try to adapt the tools to the objectives and to the needs. And for example, we can just collect point of views for the diagnostic in the beginning of the project. Just for us to understand the way the area functions and the lack of equity in the area, for example. And you can also have a very long involvement process. Asking people to co-program, to think of the activity with you. That can be people, but that can be also stakeholders. And just to imagine a mixed program and to test it in real for 1 or 2 years, for example. So that won't be the same involvement of people. It depends on what you really need to do with the point of view of people. And do you want to add something?
No, I was also wondering, it's a question of time, of goals, and capacity of the people. What she said is about, because maybe in our district, when where we are working for 5 years, people don't speak French. There are a lot of people that cannot read French because they are new migrants. So it's also difficult for them to forecast and imagine the future of public space because they are really in urgent needs. So this is the way they participate, because the goal for them is to survive and to live in a house with electricity and and to pay bills. So there are different scales of participation, and it's always complementary to the urban way of designing the city. It's not contradictory. It's interesting to say and to admit and to say that it's important always to have large scale ideas and orientation that you can test maybe in a little scale. But well, I don't know if we have answered to the question.
네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you.
어떤 나라든 또
Whatever country it is, whether it's France, Paris, or Seoul, I realize that we all have the same problems. So I hope we have the chance to meet in person and discuss this. I'm actually involved in a project very similar to your project. It's an urban regeneration project. The architects go into a small, narrow alley, build a master plan, and do everything with the residents. I'm a part of designing the master plan, so I really love to meet you in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
네, 이제 세 번째 패널리스트인
So I'd like to invite Rafael Luna, who was the curator of our former SBAU, and I hope that he will ask very interesting questions. You have the floor.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for being able to participate in this forum organized by John. I'm going to speak on behalf of the Dong Woo Im and myself, who were the curators for the city's exhibition in 2019, and we had the privilege of inviting the guests today to the city's exhibition in the Seoul Biennale. And we didn't have the chance of bringing them in 2019, so it's a very nice pleasure to hear them speak today. And the reason why we invited them to present and exhibit in 2019 was because we understood both Reinventing Paris and this co-urbanism almost as catalogs of methodologies of how to intervene in the city, in a city that's already developed, but also, like as we've seen in co-urbanism, different scales of intervention, and all from in this case, from the bottom up. So we see a non-infrastructural point of view of reinventing the city, which is interesting because I was captivated by what Alexandre mentioned of how Reinventing Paris brought up the idea of using new technologies, which I was wondering how that got implemented in the architectural scale to become a catalyst for the city. Is the use of new technology something that is seen as new networks through the interventions of these new architectural projects, and that way you can build the smart grid, or how is that implementation happening in Paris in that sense?
Thank you for the question, Rafael. Just a few words about new technology. The main idea is that the builders that you might know, the big builders in France like Vinci or Bouygues, which is well known all over the world, are quite old school in their process to build. So the main idea is just give the engineer, give the startup ecosystem also the key to make new conception or new building. So that was the idea of reinventing. And this is why we implement the smart grid system or the BIM system or all the new system that we could find to build better. It was quite difficult at the beginning to make it understood to everybody, but at the end it was very cool that we changed a lot the way of building and the way of consuming the city. For the city of Paris, the Jean-Louis Missika first idea was to say, okay, let's bring together the ecosystem of the builders and the ecosystem of the startups all together, and makes a lot of meetup in the Pavillon l'Arsenal to make them share of what they could do in the use in the building, in how to make to use less energy to build. That was the main idea. Since Reinventing Paris, we made an exhibition in the beginning of that year about the key role of ER in architecture, on the strong link between ER and architecture. We try to do that, and I think it's the main idea for tomorrow. How could ER help the designer, the builders to build better?
But was there any implementation of that, looking at not the new projects, but the existing urban fabric that's happening in Paris, and how you can implement these new technologies in what's already there as well? Or was
Regarding
it just
the
guidelines
question,
for new projects?
mostly it was guideline, but the question of smart grid, like I show you the project 1,000 trees.
Right.
1,000 trees is a really good project because it not only work on energy for himself, it's energy for all the districts. This is the main ambitious of the project. And this is the smart grid is going to develop, saying that you can have a very good building, low energy, but it's not good if all the buildings around are not good. So you have to manage all of them together, and this is what they try to do actually in the conception of this building. Also for the building just behind me, the Prefecture Morland, the main idea is when you have different programs like offices, housing, swimming pool, hotel, youth hotel, market, all these programs have different temporality in the day. So we can use a new kind of, what's named boucle, all together, that the energy can be used at good time and get back the energy to other time. So it's very new because, as you could imagine, you are going to sell the program to different people. So part of the program is for officer, and part of the program is for client of housing, person like you and me. So you have to make a new deal in the contract of selling to make the energy all together. This is very important. It's not only technical, it's all a notary problem, mostly a notary problem.
Right. Thank you. And is it possible to ask also panelists here? Because then I wanted to ask how you mentioned also how new technologies are changing Seoul, and then my feeling is that in Seoul is from an infrastructural point of view, even though there is all these projects like Project Seoul for doing new architectural and production, but what's really changing is the infrastructural space where these new technologies can be implemented, how you mentioned like the underground. So I was wondering how that's being seen from the point of view of Seoul as an infrastructural project rather than an architectural project of kind of acupuncture architectural project.
사실 그 서울에는
In
이제
fact,
굉장히 많은 부서들이 있고,
Seoul
그다음에 저희가
city
이제
has many
기획하는
departments.
부서로서 이제
We
협업
are
관계가
a planning department,
많이 일어나야 되는데 지금
and
아직
we
진행이
have to
있기
engage in many
때문에 특별히 이제 저희
collaborations. But now,
부서에서 할 수 있는
the project is
프로젝트를
in
특별하게 이제
progress.
발굴했던 거고요.
And we
가운데 이제
wanted to
서울에는
find out what
기존에
sort of
이제
projects
개발
were
시대에
suitable for our
만들어진 인프라스트럭처가
bureau.
굉장히
In
많고
Seoul, there's a lot of
노후화돼
legacy
있습니다. 그래서
projects,
그것들이
legacy
이제
infrastructure
새롭게
that was
유지
built
보수
during the
관리 차원에서
development
굉장히 많은
stage
비용이
and
드는데
are
그래서
now
그거를
outdated
좀 새롭게
and
활용하니까
obsolete.
기존에
So
있는
they need
인프라스트럭처나
rebuilding.
파리
We have
리벤트
existing
프로젝트처럼 오래된
infrastructures in
문화자산을
Korea.
새롭게
There are
활용하는
also
것도 중요한 이슈지만
heritages
최근에는
to
오래된
reuse
인프라스트럭처를
and renovate,
유지
like in
관리하는
the case
비용
of Paris.
새로운
But these days,
프로그램으로 바꿔서
we
혁신할 수 있는
believe
과제가
that
되게 돼서
it
그거를
might be a
저희가
good
이제
idea
타겟으로
to
혁신 과제로 만들었고 그중에 이제 일부는
reinvent
이제
the
아까
existing
말씀드린 새로운
heritage and
그
reuse
저희가
it in a different
가능한
way rather than
개발이
trying to
가능한
maintain and
뉴
preserve it, because that
테크놀로지를 넣어서
costs
할 수
a
있는
lot.
이제 모범
We also
사례를
looked,
만들었는데
we
그
also had a model
이슈
case
저희가
where we
이제 모니터링을
applied new
계속하면서
technology.
이것들이
We
어떻게
continue to
아까
monitor
혁신
these
과제와
projects
이제 근데
and
기술보다는 아까도 말씀드렸지만
see
기술도
how it fits in
중요하지만 중요한
innovation.
건 이제 커뮤니티 공간과 지금
Technology is
필요한 그
important,
소셜라이징
but
하는 프로그램들이
we need
중요하기 때문에
community
그걸 어떻게
space and we
균형을
need
잘 맞추고
programs
밸런싱하는
to
게
promote
좀 중요한 걸로
socializing.
생각합니다.
So I think balancing these different purposes is very important for us.
Well, one last comment was on the co-urbanism, which again, I saw it as almost a catalog of these methodologies of bottom-up approaches for reinventing spaces, which we had cataloged also under appropriations, because it was the idea of the bottom-up, the human scale, people in the community taking over spaces to make them public spaces. So it intervened a lot within that topic, and that's how we exhibited. And in relating it back to Seoul, I find that the appropriations in Seoul is what makes it like very exciting to be in different neighborhoods, but these are sometimes seen as, well, not to say illegal, but not fully approved structures. But is there some sort of legitimacy that is happening towards preserving these conditions of appropriations in the city of Seoul? Or if maybe urban space, urban planning? Or if you also found that
he's a city official. He's not allowed to say.
Yeah,
You're
sure,
putting him on the
sure.
spot. Please. I'm going to intervene because Professor Chun Choi here has been our moderator, but so quiet.
Right.
Can you? No. We have 10 minutes. Please, we have to ask one more question while they're here.
사실 마지막으로 그 서머리를 부탁드리기 전에
Before I request a summary, I have one short question. First to Alexandre. You talked about what I remember. It may not be important. You said that Paris City makes a promise and gives a permit. And is the promise kept? How do you control that? For example, for 1,000 tree project has to go on for 10 years. So you have given them a city permit. How are you going to manage that? And for Approches, I have a question. You have very important themes like collaboration and exchange. But if we have to be confined because of Corona-19 in the future, are you going to continue in this matter? You cannot only meet in the forest. So what are you planning to do in the future?
For the project, we have 10-year commitment after the permit. So before the permit, it's very simple to ask teams just to make what they say, because you have the permit to control that. What is really new is that the 10-year commitment after the permit, and this 10-year commitment will be made by the team with a report made to the city. And of course, if they don't make, or if they change what they have done, they have penalties, they have to pay. This is the idea. I don't know if it's going to work, but this is the main idea.
To answer it really shortly also, I think in a confinement city, our role between urban and social design is even more important, maybe, and transitional design and temporary design, urban design is even more important. So we will continue to do this. And to make an example, I think in Paris and or in France, people could only walk around 1 kilometer during 1 hour per day. And this scale of time and distance is really the scale that we are attempting to work and to make it also at a territory scale, but the neighborhood scale, the proximity scale, and the importance of meet each other's in the scale of little plots of maybe, I don't know, 10 buildings. This is the scale that we have to try to work.
Yes, during the deconfinement period, the temporary urbanism was sort of revealed to the large audience, because suddenly we used short-term transformation for creating cycle lines, for creating urban spaces close to the shops for people to wait outside, not to stay inside. I think it's a very, well, it's not good for the sanitary situation, of course, and it wasn't good for social and isolating situations. But I think it helps people to understand this mid-level we have to work on the public space for people to meet each other in comfortable ways. So we still have job.
이 팬데믹 시기에 공공의 영역이 확장됐다.
Yes, I think it's very valid saying that there's a larger public space during the pandemic stage. I'd like to ask John Hong, Professor John Hong, to make final comments.
Well, I just want to wrap up very quickly because we're out of time, but this was such a privilege. The most amazing thing is that not only are we building a kind of bridge between the 2019 and 2021 Biennales, we're actually building a bridge between cities today, between Seoul and Paris. So I love ending these sessions where there's more questions than answers, and because that means there's going to be more conversations. So it was really a great privilege to have you here, Alexandre and Laure and Kelly. Thanks so much for joining, and this is just the beginning. We're going to be in contact with you. We're going to be bothering you. We're going to be involving you in the future, and I hope you can tolerate us because
of course,
we love you.
Big pleasure.
and then the other
Thank you
thing.
very much.
Yes,
Thank you
thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
And I just want to just quickly remind our online guests that these are called Wednesday seminars for a reason. We're having them every Wednesday. And so next week we have an exciting lecture by Paco Bunnik, who was one of our guests today. He's the chief urban designer in the planning department of Amsterdam. And he'll be also joined by Tjerd Hakau, which he's a partner at Space and Matter, also an architect working with Paco. So I hope next week, Wednesday, same time, same place, we'll all be here. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good luck, everybody.
네, 저희도 이것으로 자리를 마치겠습니다.
So we will end today's seminar. Thank you very much.